Africa is now set to face a hunger crisis in the next 6 years. A United Nations report has highlighted 58% of Africans are already experiencing moderate or severe food insecurity. The State of Food Nutrition Security report in the World 2024 outcome indicates that the continent is on track to account for 53% of the global population facing hunger by 2030. MD at FoodForward SA, Andy Plessis, speaks to us about this. Thank you so much for your time, Andy. What's the expected impact of food insecurity as well as malnutrition in Southern Africa?
Good evening, Dumasang, and thank you very much for having us. I think the impact is going to be severe. We are already in a food security crisis across South Africa. According to Stats SA, roughly 15 million people are food insecure, moderately or severely food insecure currently. Our view is that that number is quite low. About estimates, we estimate that number to be around 25 million people that are food insecure as we speak. And so I think the implication for us is if Africa is by far the worst off than the global average, and Southern Africa is also severely affected, we will start to see some of those African countries, more of those people migrating towards South Africa. Our borders are porous as it is, and we've got a huge issue around illegal immigrants. And I think that number will increase, and that will just continue to severely hamper our ability to address the problems around food insecurity and malnutrition.
Andy, I think it's also important that we highlight who or which group of society is most vulnerable to the impact, given that the large population of poverty-stricken households is right here in Africa.
Absolutely. So according to the report, and this is widely known, that the poorest people that earn the least amount of income are going to be worse affected. One of the problems the report highlights throughout the document is that people are not getting access to healthy food. Out of 5 or 7 food groups, they're not able to even reach one or to access to 1 or 2 of those groups. So the poorest are going to be severely affected. And when you think about the cost of living crisis as we speak, and although we've had some relief yesterday with the inflation numbers cooling a bit, we still see food inflation coming off a high base. So people just can't afford to buy healthy food. It's out of their reach. They can barely survive. After 2 weeks of every month, they've run out of money, and they are scrambling to be able to make ends meet until the end of the month.
On that point, of course, it was much welcome that we see an ease in inflation, but talk us through the direct links of food insecurity in relation to the state of economies on the African continent.
Yeah, so according to within the global context, we see that Africa is by far the slowest to be able to recover out of the COVID-19 pandemic. And then ourselves in South Africa were severely affected by huge amounts of bouts of load shedding every single day, crippling our businesses, people losing jobs, etc. And so we find that across the continent, due to conflicts, due to the supply chain disruptions, access to food is hampered. People are not getting enough food. The United Nations cannot even keep up with the demand of being able to supply food to some of the food insecure nations across on our borders, like Zimbabwe, for example. So we will start to see African countries just start to suffer severely, and malnutrition will increase. South Africa alone, 27% of our children up to the age of 5 years are malnourished. They are stunted. They're not getting enough nutrition in order for them to be able to grow physically and develop cognitively. And so we're going to see this trend all across Africa worsening, and that will mean economies weakening because employment opportunities will be less. People, the job market itself, the job skills won't be able to keep up with the demand, and that's going to have a huge impact all across Africa.
Lastly, what innovative solutions and financing models are available to explore to combat hunger? And in asking that question, the role of international funders?
Yeah, so the United Nations has started the work, and it's quite a complex exercise to be able to undertake, but they've started the work on looking at financing models. I think one of the things that they want to focus on more deeply is to make sure that where the funding goes towards impact, they want to see measurable impact. Now, the United Nations has got what they call the Food Insecurity Experience Scale Survey, and we will be able to use that to track whether households have improved. I think the issue here is while Africa is worse off compared to the global average, we must make sure that those financing models favor Africa and certainly Southern Africa. What we usually find is that there's a disproportionate allocation of funds, and so we must make sure that across Africa priority is set, and we make sure that wherever financing flows, we start to see measurable impact.
Thank you so much for your input. Andy du Plessis is with FoodForward SA talking to us about the growing risk of food insecurity.